though with one of these delightful ladies that are on here because they're going to have to step in.
Okay.
You don't want that. You don't want to be on the outs.
No, I don't.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We're going to give people just about, 30, 45 seconds to roll in here to the last week in mortgage today. So hang with us for just a little while. And thanks for joining. But before we get started, maybe we'll just chat here for a while. So yeah, we were sharing a story early on about Craig's mug. So I think I'll just get going. It's like when
let's talk about the old Norwest mug.
Let's just get going and talk about that. So Craig and I have known each other for quite some period of time, and talked for a while and knew each other, and then didn't see each other for a while, and then ran into each other again.
Mortgage Collaborative, I think, is how we connected.
Yeah, it is. And so it's always great when that happens. But as we hopped on the call today here, he held up a mug that he was holding. And it's like, oh my God, is that a Norwest mug? And it is, which we both worked for Norwest back in the day. And that's when we first knew each other. So,
we were talking, we both bled blue and green, the Norwest, and loved that company. And when Norwest bought Wells Fargo, I think I was really disappointed to find out that we were going to change the name of the combined company to Wells Fargo. And so I saw this on a coworker's desk, and he was leaving, he was retiring, and I took it, and it's been my coffee mug for over 20 years.
I love that. I love that. I have a picture of the Norwest Tower that was signed by Caesar Pele when it was built.
Wow.
At my house that has a spot on a wall that I haven't gotten it up there in my new house. That's the only Norwest thing that I have, but I love it, and I've hung on to it since 1987 when they moved into the new tower. So those were fond years for me too. Bernard, I had no idea that you were a former Norwest alum as well. There's probably quite a contingency of us out there still in the industry.
I think so. I run into old Norwest folks all the time.
Yeah. Well, all right, let's get started. This is the last week in mortgage today. I should have done an intro at the beginning before we started talking. I have with me Craig Gentry, who is the president of Consumer Mortgage Lending. He is the president of Consumer Mortgage Lending at Prosperity Bank. And I am so happy, as always, to talk with you and have you here with me today.
Great to be here. Thank you. I'm looking forward to this.
You are welcome. Share with us a little bit. So you're at Prosperity Bank. You're in Texas. Share with us a little bit about Prosperity.
You bet. So, my career has been always in mortgage, but it really was, I was 29 years at Norwest Wells Fargo. Yeah. And in 2018, got a call and had an opportunity to move over to the regional bank, Prosperity Bank. And we're a $40 billion bank, about 280 banking centers in Texas and Oklahoma. And so we have a mortgage department that we've gotten it a little bit smaller over the last year or so. But in 2021, 2022, we were doing about 8,000 units a year for about $3 billion and almost 100% portfolio product. So that's probably been the biggest change that I've seen at a regional bank. And I don't think I'm the only regional bank going through this, but and I guess it was March of 23, we had the first bank failure, the Silicon Valley Bank. Mm-hmm. When that happened, it caused a chain of events that really impacted regional bank mortgage operations. Yeah. The biggest one was the exodus of deposits that went to the big banks. And that was mainly a fear-based issue. People were afraid to keep their money in a regional bank like Prosperity. Even though we were financially sound, I think they just felt more comfortable with a Chase or a Wells or a Bank of America. And when you pull that money out of the bank, that's what we use to fund mortgage loans. And so it's been a challenge. And what I've seen at our bank and others is that we've had to make a shift from being a pure portfolio lender, doing one-time close and doctor loans and adjustable rate mortgages, even some fixed rate product, to doing more loans in the secondary market, FHA and Fannie Mae. And that was a significant culture shock for our organization because many of us hadn't done an FHA loan in years. So we're having to relearn.
Yeah.
But, we've also seen a hit to our salespeople. We were at 75 loan officers at our peak, and we're now at about 45. We've cut our operations staff by about a third. But we've settled down now. It feels pretty comfortable. I think we're in a good spot and still making that transition to a secondary lender.
Yeah. Well, you kind of led us right into where I wanted to go for part of today. Awesome. So it's always nice when it works out so smoothly that way. So I would love to talk a little bit about like the impact and some of the impacts of things that they're having in the industry just in general. So rates have dropped. Not appreciably, but they have dropped, and it is causing different things to happen in different places. So
it's funny, rates have come down a little bit off of their peak, but I think right at the end of 23, the last week in December, the first week or so of January, if you were in the mortgage business, you just got all excited because rates looked like they were going to start coming down, and it was going to be, back to a refi time again, and that was just a head fake. That really wasn't real. We've seen the interest rates kind of level off, and so but interest rates are having a huge impact. When they went up like they did so quickly, I think it shocked the public, and to a point where they thought a 6.5% or a 7.5% interest rate was just crazy. But the reality is that's not too crazy. I mean, I remember I bought my first house at 13.5 and was glad to have it. So a 6.5% rate today is not bad. But
I think in 91, I mean, we were talking about this when we prepped a little bit before this call. I think in 91, when I bought my first house, I know it was an FHA mortgage and it was in the 12s with great credit. So, I mean, fabulous credit, and it was in the 12s.
Well, one of the impacts that we're seeing from the low interest rates that we were putting in people in like 21 and 22. And when I think back, it's hard for me to believe that we actually were making loans in the twos.
I know.
Like a 2 3/4.
It was a 2 still.
3.5 was, high. Yeah, I remember people would call and say, "What are your rates?" I say, "Well, today we're at 3.5." I go, "Oh my gosh, you're so high." But the problem that we've got now is if you've got one of those 30-year fixed rate 3.5% mortgages, you don't want to just get rid of that. I mean, that's something that people are holding on to. Yeah. And so it's doing two things. It's causing people to not want to make a move, but it's also hurting banks like ours because that portfolio is not churning. And that's something that we would expect that every 7 years or so, those loans pay off. But these 3.5% mortgages, we're going to live with these for a while.
Yeah, I've seen we've been in this cycle and they've been going on long enough that they're calling it house stuck or house trapped at this point, where people are feeling like they're stuck there because even if they want to downsize, I've got a number of people in my neighborhood. It became a topic of conversation at our pool at the end of the summer that they're in some very large homes and their kids are gone. Their families have moved away. So it's not like they have grandkids in and out all the time. And they were talking about wanting to downsize into a smaller home, but based on where their interest rate was at and where home prices have went, to move into a house half the size of the house that they're in would cost them twice as much.
Yeah.
And so they're like, why would we do that to ourselves? Instead, we'll stay lonely wandering around this great big house. And so I think a lot of people are feeling that.
I think we're starting to see some people get over that shock. I can see it in my own kids, and they're all living in their first home, but now they keep having babies, and so they're outgrowing their homes, and so they're looking to buy houses, and we're seeing mortgage application volume up. But because these interest rates are a little bit elevated, it's challenged us a little bit on qualifying for sure. So we're seeing more people that apply that can't qualify just because their payments are higher than what they would have expected.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit. Obviously, the time frame that we thought, I think a lot of us thought, I won't say that for everybody, but the time frame that a bunch of us thought in the industry that this would last has gone on longer than I think what we thought. So extended time frame. What do you think that type of like extended time frame, what kind of a impact does that have on the industry? I mean, we've seen a few things here, but I would love to hear from you. Like, what do you think starts to happen? Are there other consequences down the road that we're going to face if this goes on for longer?
I think overseeing the mortgage operation here, and primarily on the originators that I see, if you think, or if they had thought that this elevated interest rate would have lasted as long as it did, they may have done things a little bit different. And what I mean by that is I think, unfortunately, too many originators have just stayed what they were doing, and they didn't make any changes, thinking that this would be a short-lived situation and they would be back into the money again, and it hasn't been that way. And so as an originator, you really need to change your mindset a little bit, cast a wider net, or change the way you're doing business, because there's a business out there. It's just harder to get. And if you don't make some changes, it's the business that's coming in or not coming in isn't going to change.
Yeah.
So I would say that was one of the things that I've seen with our originators.
Yeah, you're going to be just like everybody else on the street that didn't make a change and still being in that bucket. You need to set yourself apart in some way.
Sitting around going, woe is me. It's, and it's interesting because we do have, even within our firm, some wildly successful originators, but what I see is that they're doing the things that the others are unwilling to do. So they're taking steps that they don't want to fail. They're just not going to fail. So they're doing what they have to do, and it's making a difference.
Want to share? Can you share any of those things of what you're seeing the difference between the ones that aren't willing to do it? What are the people that are not willing to fail? What are they doing?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is getting out and letting people know what you do. We had a panel discussion here recently, and one of our top originators said the first thing I did when I saw what was going on is I pulled out my wedding list. Wanted to remind all of the people that I knew, this is what I do. And so when you're considering, or if you know somebody considering a home purchase or refinance or an upgrade or downsize, second home, keep me in mind. And so I think just starting with something basic like that is a great way to go. But making sure that you've got your CRM working correctly, maybe go the extra step and reaching out to referral partners. So there's all sorts of things you can do besides just sit down and wait on the phone to ring.
I think that a large part of people, we've obviously been in the industry for a really long period of time, but originators, that's a starting place a lot of times for a lot of new people in the industry. They come in and they kind of start in that vein. If you haven't been through a cycle like this before, and I don't think any of us have been through a cycle like this one, you don't maybe have those skills that we all used to use before things started dropping out of the sky on our laps to tap into.
Right.
So it's like, do you know how to build a strong business plan? And what is your business plan? And are you sticking to it? And all of those types of things that are basic things in the industry when you have to work for the business.
There's really nothing that not every originator already knows. It's just about executing or doing those items or those action items that you need to do. So it's nothing special. It's just the things that everybody needs to do. Absolutely.
From a business perspective,
to talk about, the duration of the high interest rates. If you go back, I remember when interest rates, and this was before 2021, 2022, but when interest rates were at 5% or so, every year we would say, interest rates are supposed to go up next year. These interest rates are going up. How many years did we do that? For about 20 years. And it didn't happen. And then finally it happened, and we're thinking, okay, well, this will last for a few months or whatever. And then, here we go at the end of 2023, beginning of 24, we think, okay, it's over. Now let's, we'll get back into some really good interest rate environment. Well, this is going to most likely extend further than we want it to. So,
Yeah.
you know, it could be third quarter or fourth quarter before we realistically see these rates come down with a handle.
Yeah, I think that does seem like, I do think that it seems more like that the longer it goes on. Do you think we'll see, I have an opinion about this, but do you think we'll see further M&A in the industry if rates stay how they are longer?
Well, from my perspective at a regional bank, I hope so, because that's how this bank grows. So our bank has been, since inception, we grow by buying other banks.
Okay.
And I would expect, and we've done what we need to do to keep powder dry so that we're ready for opportunities to come along. So I think absolutely we'll see more M&A.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. I think that a lot of people like had the staying power and kind of gave it a time frame. And if it extends much beyond that time frame that they gave, I see a number of things happening on the independent mortgage banker side. We've already seen some of it happen, that people have owned their businesses for a long period of time. They're probably at a similar age to where we're at, have been in for a long period of time. And they don't, if the cycle goes on much longer, they essentially are going to retire.
Oh my gosh, the business is tough. There's no question about it. I mean, you can't take that much activity out of the market and everybody be happy and healthy and profitable.
Right.
That's not possible.
Right.
So there is consolidation and acquisition that will occur and continue to happen.
So we're also, the other thing that we're running into here relatively quickly. I know that primaries have started and things like that. Is we're in an election year where we're gonna have. Well, maybe we will. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't have a political impact. And kind of like, let's talk a little bit about does an election year in the environment we're in right now, does it have, or do we know if it has any impact at all on our industry?
Well, I can only go from personal experience here, Faith, but it seems like every time I've been in a presidential election year, interest rates have come down a little bit.
Yeah.
See how that works.
Yeah.
The impact of the current administration, they have some impact, but it does seem to have some relevance that we're in a presidential election year. And, when you start looking at Fannie Mae just came out saying they're changing their position. They don't see us going into a recession. We see other economists saying it's going to be a light recession. Recession always would be indicative of lower interest rates. So I think that the indicators would suggest that we will see lower interest rates in the latter part of 24. And whether that's caused by election year or not, it'll be another year where we had an election year and interest rates drop, would be my guess.
Quite a bit, just because we have been able here to attain a lot of really great speakers that have engaged with us from the agencies. And so it makes me wonder whether a new administration, sometimes the guard changes within the agencies, right? And with that change, does our focus for, number one, is there a focus on mortgage? I feel like this administration has been focused on housing. It has such a big impact to our economy.
Yes.
To someone new coming in, is that the same? And what impact does that have on the focus on affordability that we don't really necessarily think of it maybe as a luxury of having that focus on housing right now. But I think based on some things having been changed because of that focus, we have had that. So, I mean, any thoughts on, what potentially do you think that we still will have because of where the industry's at? Any new administration coming in, that they'll still have a focus on housing?
Well, I think housing is just such an integral part of our economy. I don't see how it can't. So, I would say that it's not a necessary focus on mortgage. I think it's a focus on housing and specifically affordable housing.
Yeah.
And then, the mortgage becomes a benefactor from the residual aspect.
Yeah.
Because we're such an important part of housing. So I don't think it's going to, I don't think it's going to make a difference if the current administration remains or if there's a change. I think there will continue to be a focus on affordable housing.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right. The time we need to do that. I think the time is good to do that. Appreciate there's in the chat, Margie, the Sunday Chicago Tribune had an article about how the housing chill seeps into other industries.
Yeah.
Featuring a home inspector who is thinking about side hustles in order to sustain income. I think there's a lot of that has went on for sure.
I haven't called it side hustles, but I know what she's talking about. You know, it's interesting. I think a lot of people are doing what they have to do to make it. I mean, I feel horrible about how many people in this industry I know just getting by.
Yeah.
And I hate that. And I hope it's a lesson to especially the young people in our industry that in the good times, put something away so you can weather this kind of thing. But, you know, the interesting thing I've been concerned with really is the remote working that has been so prevalent now since COVID. And what I have learned is that there are a number of people that have multiple jobs remote working without telling their individual employers. So maybe that's some of the side hustle going on too.
That is the side hustle. I'm thinking you hit the nail on the head on that one, that there is probably a lot of that.
So I can tell you at our institution, there's a push to bring people back into the office as best we can. And you know, when you work remote, you really do lose that team spirit, that synergy that comes from working around other people with kind of like-minded. And you know, you can say, hey, what's our maximum LTV on a second home? And you know, you lose that when you're working remote.
Yeah.
So I think it would be good to, as best we can, maybe get back into the office a little bit.
I'm at IMB in New Orleans right now. For those of you viewing the beautiful hotel room behind me here. And I was having this exact conversation with somebody this morning that they're like, well, where's your corporate office? And it's like, well, technically we just changed it to Austin, Texas, because that's where our president and COO resides. But we really don't have one. We're a 10-year-old company that's always had everybody remote. You do have to work at it. I feel like we have a unusually tight team of people to have us all be remote workers, and we all love that. So that's why it's that way. We've made it that way. But I do think that if you don't have people that are very, very engaged with each other otherwise, it's harder to manage it. And especially if you have people feeling like they have to have a side hustle in order to survive, then you could, you know, lose track of that easily. Chris posted in the chat that they had an appraiser that started making deliveries for Amazon. So, you know, that DoorDash, all of those things, I do think there are a number of people who do have that side hustle.
Hey, well, hats off to somebody that'll do what needs to do to feed their family. You know, I wished it wasn't so, but you got to do what you got to do.
So let's shift and move to talking about, like, what does your office look like? So you said that you're trying to bring people.
Well, my office, actually, I'm sitting on the beach right now, but I've got this virtual background that makes you think I'm in my office.
Yeah. I know that much.
So what does my office look like? And I'm sorry, what were you looking at?
Yeah, so like, what does your office environment look like? So there was there's kind of a battle going on out there, not just in our industry either. I think in every industry, you know, after COVID happened, people said, I mean, some people were really bold about it, and they said, you come back into the office every day of the week or you don't have a job. Some people have went to more of a hybrid model. Some people have shortened their work weeks in the office and let people be at home. There was an article that came out this last week that CEOs have lost the battle, that they're letting up on employees returning to the office full time, 5 days a week. So I would love to hear, like you just said, you think culture is very driven by being back in the office. What has the reaction been of your employees? And do you have people back in the office 5 days a week, or is it something less than that?
Well, it depends on the position that's held. But of course, we're a bank, so there are certain positions that you must be in the office, but we still like to have people work in the office. We have not demanded that at this point, and I think we're probably a ways off from it. I've also been hesitant to use that as a way to thin our staff, because I've got some people working remote that are just incredibly productive,
Right.
and some of our best workers. So I wouldn't want to lose that. And I think they know it also. So I think as long as people are incredibly productive, we're going to try to let that go as best we can. Although I still want to encourage them to come into the office because of the reasons I mentioned earlier. Our sales teams tend to come in more, which is kind of unusual, where we've got maybe closers and processors oftentimes working remote.
Yeah, I think, sales team, maybe it's the energy that they get from that and it motivates them to keep them going, being in. But kudos to your team members who it's important to them for some reason in their scheduling, that they've made you believe that they can, and if they've proven that they can do it from home, because that's maybe what's driving them, is maybe their production, and they understand that if I produce and I continue to do all the things that I need to do, this is an opportunity for me. If I don't, then I don't have that opportunity anymore. I would think that would be the driving factor.
I think you're exactly right. And plus, if you're in sales, you eat what you kill. And if you're not doing any business, you're not getting any compensation really. And so they're doing what they need to do. And I mean, for me, if I was still an originator, I was not a good work remote kind of guy, because I would want to get up and make myself a new pot of coffee, or go put something, clothes in the washer, or go turn on the sprinkler. I found all sorts of reasons to have to get up and move around. When I'm in this environment, it's not the same. So a little more focused. And I think some of our salespeople find that same thing. When they come into the office, they're a little more focused.
Yeah, I've been remote for almost 15 years now, because of the fact that I was in a sales role and not in the same state most times as the company that I work for. But I must be kind of the unusual person, because I don't get up during the day and do any of those things. Literally, I get the flash on my phone that says you better stand up, you haven't moved in 4 hours, kind of thing. So I'm not quite sure what that says, but I do think that there are a certain percentage of people that operate very, very well in an environment at home.
I agree. I
You just
agree. Yeah, for
figure
me,
out
it's
what
just
you are.
squirrel. I got to go over here.
Yeah.
But you've got the kind of personality that can do it. So that's awesome. And same with our company here. We've got plenty of people that are doing this successfully, working remote. So we're not forcing anybody to come in, just encouraging it.
Well, here are the stats from this article. So only 4% of CEOs are demanding people to go back to the office full time. Now, that's not just in mortgage, that's the whole entire CEO population out there that they tapped into. But at the same time, they're contradicting that with attracting and retaining top talent is their internal priority. But I would have to think that by demanding people come back into the office in the week, like you said, there are certain people that you wouldn't want to lose that aren't willing to come back into the office 5 days a week. UPS was one of the big ones that announced recently that they're ditching their hybrid work policy, now calling everybody back. Corporate employees have to come back full time 5 days a week. A lot of their functions, I would think, would have to be back in the office. Maybe not all of them, but apparently they have taken that stance. But most CEOs have kind of given up, I guess I would say, at this point, and decided that hybrid work week is something that they can live with, and they're not going to demand people do anything.
Yeah.
At this point, as long as things are working.
Yeah, I don't want to be in that 4% group. I wouldn't want to be that guy.
Yeah, your conversations would maybe be a little bit different if you were, making demands of people. Plus, I just think that the work environment after COVID, not just in mortgage, just overall, I just think it's changed. I think the priorities of you know, people coming in after us are very different. And I think it's going to continue to be something that they demand, that flexibility from their employers.
Well, just think how we were prepared for that in this industry. We had gone digital already because I couldn't have a processor or a closer working remotely, printing out customer information and documents and having it on their desk when their 17-year-old kid and their kid friends come in and see all of that.
It is, yeah.
You just can't do that. But now that it's all digital, it's all on the computer, you can do your work without having to use a printer or a fax machine. So our industry was prepared for that. And so when it became an issue, and then I just remember being in the position of, we were so hungry for mortgage processors, I would do anything. Work remote, sure, I don't care. Just come work for us, please.
Just work. Isn't that the case? And how things change? Well, we could probably talk for hours. We are at the bottom of the hour already. So it's always so awesome to talk to you. Cheers to you. I don't have a glass with me with your Norwest mug. I absolutely, you made my day by pulling that thing out and seeing that. That makes me so happy. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for doing this with me today. For those of you,
thank you.
You're welcome. For those of you who joined us, come back next Tuesday at the same time for the Last Week in Mortgage Today. And for those of you who are listening on the podcast, join us on some Tuesdays. And only go to YouTube and find us on the days that you miss being with us live. We love having you with us and having your comments in the chat. So appreciate you, Craig. Thank you so much. I hope to talk with you soon.
All right, y'all have a blessed day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.